Today we're going to have a look at the language of algebra. Mathematics has its own language of symbols and certain terminology, and I always joke and say mathematicians are lazy because they try to write down things in the shortest possible way. They don't want to waste time writing out long words, etc. So there's so many symbols that mean different things, and as we go on through these videos we're going to learn more and more about those symbols. But first of all, to have a look at algebra itself, and most people, as soon as they see variables, which are lowercase letters, they realize that's algebra, and sometimes there's a lot of fear attached to it, and that needn't be the case. We need to just learn the language. So if we go right back to the beginning of our schooling, and maybe at some stage we had 2 plus 6 equals placeholder. And we knew that we had to work that out and put the answer inside the placeholder. So all algebra is really doing is it's also doing that, and instead of a placeholder, it's writing a lowercase letter, which means whatever the answer is, or that lowercase letter actually at this stage stands for any number until you find out what that number is. So in algebra we get many different forms and combinations of these letters, which are called variables, and numbers and combinations of numbers and variables. So I'm going to give you 2 examples for now. Let's start off with, first of all, with 6w plus 2x minus y over 8 minus 4. And then I also want to look at 8x plus 2 is equal to negative 6. So here we've definitely got algebraic things going on because there are variables and there are numbers. If we look at this one, it's got plus signs and minus signs. This one's got a plus sign, an equal sign, and also what's standing there as a negative sign, an integer, which we'll speak about at another time. So if I have a situation like this where there is no equal sign, then I'm talking about an algebraic expression. If, however, that statement does have an equal sign in it, then I'm speaking about an algebraic equation. And it's easy to remember that this is called an equation because we've got equal, so we know that that's the one containing the equal sign. Then we need to also look at what these different things are made up of. So first of all, let's have a look at just that there on its own, 6w. So if we ever have a number standing right next to a variable, that means 6 times the variable. In other words, 6 times some unknown number. Here we have a different situation where we've got a variable over a number. Well, remember that this division line here, actually it is a division line in a fraction. We say y over 8, but it actually means y divided by 8. So now if we get on to what it means to have terms in an expression, this here is one term because what's occurring inside of that is the operation of multiplication. So 6 times w makes up one term. Here we've got 2x, which means 2 times x, so it's one term. Here we have something divided by something. So remember, multiplication and division are inverse operations. So just like having multiplication within that makes it one term, having division within that makes it one term. And then there we've got a 4 on its own. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 terms in this algebraic expression. Let's have a look at the algebraic equation. So in the expression we saw that what separates terms are plus and minus signs. What separates terms in equations are also plus and minus signs, but added to that also an equal sign. So because of that we've got one term, another term, and another term. These two separated by a plus sign, these two separated by an equal sign. So with an equation, we can be asked to solve for x at some stage, and that will be dealt with in another video. Let's go back to the expression for now. and learn the rest of the terminology that we need to have in order to understand what somebody's speaking about when they're giving an algebra lesson. So we said here that 6W means 6 times W. I've already said that any lowercase letters are called variables, and they stand for any number. If they're given as variables, you just know they stand for any number, but we have to be careful. In this expression, we've got a variable W, a variable X, and a variable Y. Because they're different letters, they each stand for a different number. Now let's look at the 6. So this 6 is being affected by the W. Whatever the W is will affect what this entire term becomes. So let's, for argument's sake, say if W had the value of 1, then it would be 6 times 1, which is 6 for that term. If W had the value of 6, then it would be 6 times 6, which would be 36 for that term. So this term is very dependent on the value of the W. And as I've said, at the moment, we don't know what the value of the W is. But the number that stands in front of a variable is called a coefficient. So just to put this all together, we have an algebraic expression because it has no equal sign. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms separated by plus and minus signs. Within a term, you could have multiplication as you've got there, or division as you've got here. And now we need to speak about this number 4. So if we look at that number 4, it has no variable attached to it. It's not dividing into a variable or being divided by a variable or multiplied by a variable. There's no variable in sight. So whatever, there's nothing to affect it, like we saw with the W there. Depending on the W, the whole term would have various values. This 4 isn't affected by a variable, so its value remains constant. In other words, its value never changes, and that is why a number in an expression without a variable is called a constant. So the same goes for everything inside the equation. Here we've only got one variable because we've only got one type of letter, whereas here we had 3 different variables. Here we do have 3 terms. This 8 is attached to the x by multiplication, so it's a coefficient. This 2 is a constant because there's no variable, and this -6 is also a constant because there's no variable. I hope that has been helpful, and in future videos we're going to see how to start to work with expressions and equations, and if we know the correct terminology, it will be much easier to understand what is being explained.